Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, coming to you from the LaPanta household and, of course, the Aquarius home studio on location. I'm feeling a little bit better about our June 24th live show at Tuttle's, Anthony, because the Panthers are up 2-0 in this series. And as I said to you, we can't have this thing go 7 because that is the day of June 24th. And
we're really trying to make sure we limit the number of cross-continental flights that you have to make.
I think
you're only going to have to make 2.
I think so. You think that they'll win 1 game, though? Like
I think you'll have to go back to Florida, and the Panthers will win it on home ice in Game 5.
And deep down, I always say this, like, I think any owner would take that. Like, you want to win the cup, but you really don't want to. One, you don't want to do it on the road. You want the excitement of doing it at home, but you want that other gate.
Gentleman's sweep, they call it.
Yeah, exactly.
Get up 3, lose 1 on the road, come home and win it in Game 5.
Yeah, that's the way it works, and that would be fun. So my guess is that we'll see a split in Edmonton. Obviously, the Oilers got to this point; they're a proud team, but and we'll talk a lot about the Wild coming up. But let's talk first about the Florida Panthers. They're up 2-0 in the series. Game 1, they probably got a stolen victory thanks to the Oilers getting bobbed, getting out-goalied. Not that Skinner was bad, but you get it. But Game 2, I think I've talked to you about this on the podcast 1,000 times during this playoff run for them. I've never covered a team that every single game will go 15 minutes without giving up a shot. And it was remarkable. The Oilers couldn't get through the neutral zone. They had 5 shots through 30 minutes, 7 through 40. And then eventually, as usual, the Panthers broke out in the third period.
They've been great in the third period all playoffs. It's amazing. I think it's 30-11 or 29-11 or something like that. They've outscored their opponents, and they've got depth, but they also just play so hard and so committed to their defensive style. I think it was last week's show when we were just reflecting back on the last couple seasons and the fact that last year maybe we shouldn't have been surprised when they went on their run because the previous year they had been the best team in the NHL during the regular season. And then it was just that adjustment period early in the year under Paul Maurice last year when they weren't great for, let's say, 2.5 or 3 months. They were then really good down the stretch to get the final playoff spot. They were great in the playoffs, and they've been great all year this year. I think you got to give Paul Maurice a lot of credit because he's taken a team that won the year before under Andrew Burnett, playing just a wide open, we're faster, we're more skilled than you style that maybe wasn't conducive to a deep playoff run. It was great in the regular season, and they outscored everybody, but he got that team to buy into a different way of playing that they still have the firepower, still have the explosiveness, still have the speed, but how hard they play and how committed on the defensive side is really something. And he's had those guys playing that way all year long.
He had a funny line a week or so ago because he's always self-deprecating, but he's like, all I did in last year was manage to take a team that had 122 points and bring them to 92.
But that's part of it is that he doesn't, I think that's probably why he gets the guys to embrace it and to buy in because he doesn't make it about him.
Yeah.
And is able to look at that. Now, obviously, it's a lot easier to look back on that when you're in the Cup Finals. And at that time, I think maybe it was up a game. But it's easier to be self-critical at that point when yes, you went to 92 last year, but you went to the Cup Finals.
Exactly.
And now this year you had one of the best teams in the NHL and you're in the finals again. But I do think that's how coaches get guys to play as one and make it about a team rather than an individual. I think that you sense that. It bleeds down from the top through the club.
Do you believe that this is the same Dmitry Kulikov that we covered here? I mean, this is somebody that for the Wild, for the Jets, for the Oilers, he could not get into the playoff lineup at times.
Right.
And yet he's had a truly good playoff with Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
He doesn't, I mean, he's not a major part of their team, but he's been better than I ever thought he would be. I would have guessed if you're playing this guy, you're in trouble. And he hasn't been that.
Yeah.
But I think it speaks of just how their forwards are such a big part of their team defense. And when you've got guys like Barkov and then even Matthew Tkachuk, for all of his physical, like 90 miles an hour the other direction kind of play. He's also really good in his own zone.
Sam Reinhart
is really good end to end in the rank. I think they've got a great group that plays the game the way you have to play it. That doesn't require you to lean on your defenseman alone to defend.
As Kyle Oposo told me the other night, when you have a two-time Selke Trophy winner as your captain, that's your best defensive forward. It's no excuse for everybody else. You better start.
You better play the way he plays, or else there is no excuse to play at one pace going towards your net and the other pace coming back toward your own net.
The good news here on Wednesday, June 12th, is that Alex Barkov is on the ice in Florida, according to George Richards. They're actually down there practicing, and then we'll fly up to Edmonton today for game 3 tomorrow. But Barkov obviously took the forearm to the jaw the other night, and you just didn't know if he was concussed or a broken jaw. Leon Draisaitl left his feet. It was a frustration play by Draisaitl.
I
clearly,
thought so too.
Like, not just frustration, it was dirty. Like he, there's one thing, like, if you're frustrated and you lose your composure. I think he recognized who it was and what he was trying to do and how important he was. It's a 2-1 game. If he's not called, or 2, if they call him and they kill the penalty, now it's a 2-1 game with 10 minutes and you just knock out the best defensive player on the other team. Really good chance that they come back and tie that game, but Evan Rodriguez makes it 3-1 on the ensuing power play.
And I never ever want to assume that a player has intent to injure in his mind, but watching the game and watching the play, I thought there was zero doubt that Draisaitl knew exactly who he was hitting. It wasn't just a high-speed, blink of an eye reaction kind of play. He knew who he was hitting. He went in with an intent to, I don't want to say injure, but he went in with an intent to send a message. Mm-hmm. And it for sure was a frustration play. I listened to all the post-game quotes from the Edmonton side, and I don't buy any of it. I think it's BS. I thought it was a dirty hit. And sure, I thought for sure there would be a fine. I didn't think the league would go so far as to suspend one of the best offensive players in the Edmonton lineup and potentially change the series with a suspension alone. But I thought for sure there'd be a fine, and I was surprised there wasn't.
Yeah, that no fine, and I do think that if the way it works in these situations, in George Parros' travels during the Stanley Cup Final, is that they get the medical reports, and I think that when he realized, all right, it's not a broken jaw, they weren't going to suspend Leon Draisaitl, and they obviously knew at that point.
Yeah, I would have been surprised if it was a suspension, but I was surprised there wasn't a fine levied, because I think during the regular season that's a suspendable hit.
Yeah. Were you surprised at the major on Foegele on Luosterainen? Like, that one very much reminded me of, even though it was a different sort of scenario, of Foligno and Faksa, who did get a major as well. Foligno was kicked out of that game, but then remember the league came out the next day and basically said we screwed that up. I thought this was very similar. Like, what is Foegele in that situation supposed to do? Luosterainen changes his direction, basically skates into him. It's a quick reaction play. And then, I get it from a referee standpoint. You see a guy laying on the ice. You don't know if he just blew up his knee. And then, of course, Luosterainen comes back on the ensuing power play.
Right. Yeah, and those are always when the guy rolls around like he might not walk again, and then he's back on the next shift. I always hate to see that, but I agree with you. I thought it actually was I had kind of forgotten about that Foligno Faksa play, but it was very similar to that, where when you watched it live, my first instinct was, ooh, that was a bad hit. And then when you watch the replay, there isn't a lot that Foegele can do on the play.
Yeah.
And maybe it warranted a minor penalty. In hindsight, I wouldn't have called it a major, but I can see why the officials called it a major at full speed.
You also know that Luosterainen is such a huge part of their team, and I'm not even accusing him of diving. I mean, that was a major collision. It definitely was
not a dive. When the guy rolls around on the ice, and now I will say I've talked to our analyst guys and because I've said that remember the number of times Jason Zucker used to look like he was going to, he might be on the way to get his leg amputated, and then he'd be back in like 3 minutes. And those guys, I'm talking about Ryan Carter and Wes Wallace, have both in separate conversations said, sometimes you just lay there because something's not right, and it just takes you 30 seconds to get your wits back about you. I've never been in a collision at that speed, so I don't want to judge guys for. It isn't like soccer where they're rolling around on the field knowing full well that the only reason they're doing it is to try to get a yellow or red card in the situation. These guys, they just said sometimes you just feel something in your knee, you don't know what it is, or in your shoulder or your elbow or whatever it might be, and it just takes you a second to gather your wits and say, I'm okay. It's okay. And so for that reason, I don't think it was a dive at all. It was just the way he was laying on the ice. You wouldn't have been surprised if he didn't come back for the rest of the night, and then he's on the next shift.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, there's no doubt it was a trip. But what I'm saying is, obviously Oilers fans, when you see the guy come back and you just lost a player for the entire game, you saying he embellished. I don't even think he embellished. I think it's what you just said. I think that he
just takes a second.
And he had to go to the back and walk it off. We saw that with Aaron Ekblad in the second period, I believe. He got twisted up with Connor McDavid, limped down the runway like he tore his ACL, and next thing you know, he was back a couple minutes later. The one guy for the Oilers that looks like he's seriously hurt, that, it's funny, be careful what you wish for, because Oilers fans have been scrutinizing him all postseason long as Darnell Nurse, and now he's on the bench, plays 3 shifts the final 2 periods the other night, and now all of a sudden Oilers fans are like, oh my God, we just lost Darnell Nurse.
How are we going to win without Nurse? And we've talked a lot about the way this Edmonton team is built, and with the amount of money they've got committed to Nurse, it's hard to build the rest of the defensive core with a lot of depth around him. I think Evan Bouchard has been brilliant in these playoffs. Has really, I don't want to say emerged because he had a great season, but I think in the eyes of a lot of casual hockey fans, they've realized just how special he is. It's not just because he's on a power play with McDavid and Draisaitl.
He can clobber that puck.
Yeah, and he can walk the line. He's a really talented offensive defenseman. But they don't have a lot of depth on that blue line. They certainly aren't built to shut people down. Ekholm has been a significant addition, but that's not the strength of their club. And so you take anybody away, however you want to statistically analyze Nurse, and I know he's been on the ice for the majority of their goals against throughout these playoffs.
And CC.
And he is never going to be a shutdown defender. He's still one of their top defenders.
You're right. Making a lot of money. And you saw the other day the way his injury affected that team. I think Bouchard did get a little overextended the other night. Obviously, he had the turnover on the winning goal and a couple penalties. One player I wanted to ask you about on Florida that I think Wild fans will be interested in what I'm about to say is, what do you think of Kevin Stenlund? Because giant right shot center, incredible penalty killer. I think he's somebody that might be a casualty to their cap situation as a free agent. If you are Bill Guerin and you could sign him for $1.5 million, I'd rather have him on my team next year than Huznadinov. Like, what he has done for you talk to Paul Maurice and you ask him, what is the biggest difference between your god-awful penalty kill last year and your penalty kill this year, which has been one of the top ones in the NHL? And he'll tell you Kevin Stenlund.
I like him a lot in that role, but nothing more. Like a third line, maybe fourth line center that kills penalties and
can skate.
If you get him at $1 million, for sure. I don't know that I'd, especially with the way the Wild roster is built, I don't think you can commit more than that to a guy like that. But he'd fill a role that like Freddie Gaudreau could fill on this team, and
only at a fraction of the price in turn.
And do it at a bigger body. And it wouldn't be that small a fraction of the. I mean, if it's $1.5 million, you're $500,000 under what you're paying.
But a lot less term, I would assume.
Right. So if you could get him at about that price, I think it'd be terrific and really a big type of player that the Wild were missing in that bottom half of the lineup.
Obviously, Bill Guerin can't talk about free agents, but next time I get on the phone with him, I just would love to know what his opinion is of Stenlund because man, every time, and talking to him all series long, he's like a Swede that you would never know is a Swede. In fact, I was joking with the other day. He was talking to one of my friend reporters in Swedish, and all of a sudden he says, in the middle of his Swedish answer, long nap, and he left. And I said to Stenlund, I'm like, so long nap in Swedish is the same as English? And he just started laughing. But he's got like no accent. I don't really know a ton about him, but every time I've watched him in the last couple weeks, I just envision him in a Wild uniform and think that would be a huge addition to this team. Because the one concern, and we'll talk about the Wild after the break, and actually, let me use this as the segue to get to the break, Anthony, is the one concern I have about them essentially rolling this team back is that we just saw them roll it back last year, and they did nothing to address their penalty kill. It was crap again. And now, again, you're just going to assume that a new penalty kill coach but the same personnel is just going to automatically improve it. I think getting a big right shot center that can win draws would be a huge, huge thing. And I think Kevin Stenlund is that guy. Let's take a quick break and we'll be back here on Worst Seats in the House. Summer temps may be heating up, but at Aquarius, that just means it's a summer meltdown. And what's melting away, you ask? How about all your worries about your home's water? Whether it's city or well water, say goodbye to white scale buildup, rust stains, and contaminants like those PFAs, forever chemicals. No more funny tastes or smells, just worry-free water with a Kinetico water treatment system. Kinetico uses zero electricity and minimal salt, giving you purified drinking water right from your faucet. I've had it in my house. It's absolutely incredible. And guess what else is melting away? The price. Now through July, enjoy $500 off their new whole home Kinetico water treatment system. The Aquarius and Kinetico summer meltdown of savings all starts with a free water analysis. So make sure you get that scheduled today at AquariusHomeservices.com. That's AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius believes in earning the right to be recommended. And don't forget to mention that Russo sent you.
Don't wait. Save smarter with a 5.15% annual percentage yield 9-month certificate from Royal Credit Union. Royal's 5.15% 9-month certificate has no minimum opening balance and a locked-in rate for a guaranteed return on your investment. Open a 5.15% 9-month certificate at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate515. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 4/26/24.
Back here, Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, coming to you from the LaPanta household on this rainy Wednesday, heading to Edmonton in a couple hours and
celebrating your birthday.
All right, Anthony. We don't need to tell people ages.
Okay, celebrating your birthday at an undisclosed age.
Yes.
Even though it's already disclosed.
I'm going to text.
This is the first time that we've had a podcast on a birthday.
Yeah. Is it?
Well,
yeah, because I'm usually on the finals anyway. I'm worried. I'm texting Brandon.
I'm texting Brandon right now.
First
you
ad
cannot
block.
Take out the age. I'm just going to keep saying it.
First ad block at 15 minutes. I need you to bleep out.
Yeah, I'm going to tell him to make sure he leaves it in. I'm just going to keep dropping it in throughout the show to make sure that he can't edit it out. Because we come your way from the Aquarius Home Services studio while we celebrate Michael Russo's birthday.
Oh man, Brandon's got a lot of work to do on this pod. All right, let's talk about the Wild right now. Draft is coming up.
Well, let's go back. Your segue, which to answer the question and to finish it, I do think there's a couple things you have to keep in mind. Is one, the Wild didn't have Jared Spurgeon all year last year.
Yeah,
that's a huge part of the penalty kill. I don't know what the number would be, like how many percentage points on a kill he's worth, but he's for sure worth a few. They played a decent chunk of the year with Jonas Brodin on the sideline and at the same time as Spurgeon. So there are some things that it isn't just running the same guys back. They also didn't have Husnudinov for most of the season, and he looks like a guy who in all likelihood is going to be a part of your penalty kill. Then I do think there will be a change in coaching philosophy, and now you've got John Hines with an off season and a camp to implement what he sees as an ideal penalty kill, where last year he came in the middle. It's hard to make major adjustments at that point. Bob Woods leaving in the middle of the season and Pat Dwyer coming in. There's a lot of stuff that it's very different when these guys get a summer to prepare, a training camp to teach and implement and install, and then go into a season and then throw in hopefully having a healthy defensive core to go with it. So I don't think it's as simple as just saying you're coming back with the exact same pieces. Why do you expect it to be better? I do think there are some differences, and that isn't to say that I don't think a bigger, stronger centerman would help the penalty kill. Clearly you would, but Gaudreau was banged up all year, was a big part of the kill the year before. Spurgeon, Brodin were both hurt. Husnudinov wasn't here. You've got coaching changes. There's a lot of reasons to at least be willing to look at it with an open mind that the penalty kill might be better.
And they didn't get a save. Yeah, I guess the one optimistic thing to say is it's hard to imagine it get worse. It can only go up because man, we're I think I talked to you about our player poll that we did in The Athletic 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was a little surprised at how little votes penalty kill got as one of the biggest downfalls of the season, because, if you look at most of their losses this year, you could almost in every game say that their penalty kill doomed them in that game. It was from start to finish. That very little. When Pat Dwyer first got here, there was an immediate bump, but then it reverted back to. And probably coinciding with Renner Foligno, that was right when Foligno got hurt. And,
right, it was right when Spurgeon got hurt. It was when they lost all those guys at the same time, right at the end of December into January, the stretch that really put them underneath for the rest of the season, where they were fighting an uphill battle to get back into a playoff spot. So I think all of that is reason to be willing to look at it and say, let's wait and see what happens with some of these changes, and we don't know yet what's going to happen with the rest of the coaching staff. So I think I don't think it's as simple as saying that they're doomed because they have the same people.
I think Jack Capuano, again, is the guy that they want to hire as an assistant coach. I would assume that would happen soon. Todd Reardon is another name that I keep hearing. Although I thought he got a job the other day, but I could be wrong.
Were you surprised to see David Quinn take an assistant job?
No,
so quickly?
I think that at this point, after, sometimes you got to, you go from the Rangers to San Jose in that situation. Sometimes you got to remind people you can still coach, and it's probably not going to be in the head job. I think, again, the shocking thing that I still have is that Dean Evason never got a job. I have heard in the last couple of days that he turned down a couple of assistant jobs, which just shows you what he really feels like his role should be. And again, as often happens, it might be better to not take an assistant job now, because then you're beholden to that job in the following year.
Right.
Where now
and that's why I was asking about Quinn. I was just thinking he might be a guy,
first out of the gate guy.
And even if you have to eventually take an assistant job, like what Mike Yeo ended up doing, for example, before he got another shot as a head job, and Dave Hackstall did before he got another chance at a head job. But I would have guessed he might have been the guy that sat on the sideline for a year first, and that's what I think might be happening with Dean. I
think that's exactly what he's.
Wait and see if somebody gets fired early in the year. Maybe I'm that guy, and then if not, to get back into the NHL, you take an assistant job.
It's got to be incredibly disappointing, though, for him that he didn't get a job.
With all of these jobs available,
that's the thing that I think would be concerning for him. And a lot of ones where he just seemed tailor-made, like Seattle and Ottawa and even San Jose. But San Jose, if I were him, I wouldn't want to go there right now anyway. I think soon after San Jose hires a coach, we'll see Jack come here, because I think that's the only thing he's probably waiting for. I think he is up for that job. And Jack is somebody that would run the penalty kill here, probably the defense here, with the hand of Pat Dwyer if he comes here. And I think this is, by the way, David Quinn going to Pittsburgh is almost proof positive that Jack is the guy that they're identifying for here, because David Quinn and John Hines are very, very close. Like, in fact, John Hines does a mean David Quinn impression.
Well, wasn't he one of the guys that Hines went and shadowed while he was out of work last year?
Yeah, exactly. So I it would have made a lot of sense, but I think Jack Capuano, who he's not nearly as close with, but they got that Rhode Island connection, and obviously worked with USA Hockey. David Quinn going with Mike Sullivan makes a lot of sense as well. Speaking of which, by the way, USA Hockey is in town right now. Mike Sullivan's in town. Pat Kelleher, who runs USA Hockey. John Van Beesbrook, who runs USA Hockey. Bill Guerin, Chris Kelleher, Hines are all have been meeting here in Minnesota the last couple of days. On June 28th, each of the four nations, Sweden, Finland, United States, and Canada, have to announce the first 6 players that are going to be on next year's tournament in 2025 in both Montreal and Boston. Again, Mike Sullivan, the head coach of that team. John Hines named assistant coach last week, and I assume that John Hines will be Mike Sullivan's assistant coach for the 2026 Olympic team as well.
I saw they released the schedule for the tournament, which looks what a great tournament it'll be, although with every game mattering, because you only play 3 in your pool, so to speak, or the round robin.
It's a true round robin, and then just a championship, no consolation. I think the big reason is, one, they can't make this thing go on forever. It's in the middle of
at least had a third place game.
I think the one thing though that everybody is cognizant of is injuries. Like, why have an extra game to risk it? Just
and you're putting it in the middle of and you have to put it in the middle of the season. You don't want to have it.
And that's the thing is, like, this is still an invented tournament. Like if somebody gets hurt there, it's going to be a major catastrophe that everybody's going to be questioning. And in the middle of, right before a playoff stretch drive. And so this isn't the Olympics. You could stomach it. You understand, all right, yeah, it sucked that John Tavares got hurt in what was it, Sochi or I forget which Olympics. But that's the risk when you have an Olympic tournament in the middle of the hockey season. This is still an invented tournament with 4 nations. It's not a real World Cup. And so to add an extra game and risk factor, I just think that nobody could stomach it. So this just sort of makes it quick. And this is going to be in lieu of next year's All-Star game and essentially bye week. So I'm looking forward to covering it with Pierre LeBrun and CJ at The Athletic. And I assume our Montreal writer and our Boston writer, it'll be an absolute blast. Let's talk about the next couple of weeks coming up here. We got the draft June 28th and 29th. Wild right now, the 13th pick. I still am reading the tea leaves, thinking that they are very open to maybe moving down, Anthony, and getting an extra pick, maybe an extra 2 picks, because they are in that sweet spot where, I think even Judd Brackett has said like 11 or 12 really can't miss guys in the top of the draft, and the Wild are at 13.
And you just don't know, though, in that spot. What if one of the guys you have tabbed in the top 12, what if somebody else has a different opinion and all of a sudden he's available?
Yep.
Or even if maybe a couple of them are available and it's worth moving up 2 spots to make sure you get one of them. If one of them slips to you, great. And I think it was last week's show where we talked about this, and it's one of the fascinating things to me about the draft preparation is that when you're in that kind of spot, you go into it having to prepare for scenarios that are outside of your control because you're at the mercy of 12 teams in front of you. And any one of the 12 might do something unexpected that changes your strategy immediately. So you've got to have ideas in mind that what would it cost to move up to probably anywhere from 6 to 12. And what would it, if the guys that we want are gone already and we don't see a difference between guy number, I shouldn't say a difference, but a small difference between guys number 13 and all the way down to maybe 18 or 20, that is it worth, what would we want to move back 4 picks, 5 picks, 6 picks? There's just so many hypotheticals for which you have to be prepared, because it's not like you get 4 days to think about it. Once you're on the clock, you're on the clock.
Right. And that's why a lot of that work, that those exercises go on now. Like, there's no doubt that when they sit down at that draft floor, both Bill Guerin and Judd Brackett will know who are the teams behind them that would be willing to move up and what the price would be. And then, as you said, you make that decision on the fly, because all of a sudden, you might be really interested to move back to 19 or 20. But if somebody that you have as a can't miss is still on your board, you're probably taking that player.
You're trying to sort through all the pre-draft conversation, which teams might be high or low on this guy or that guy, and you never know if what you're hearing is valid or if it's somebody throwing up smoke screens to push you a different direction. It'll be really interesting to see what happens with it, but the Wild have been aggressive with trading extra picks, trading to move up or down in these spots, and they're in a decent spot with the picks they have already.
Speaking of aggressive and trading, I am starting to get the impression that Bill Guerin has been a little more aggressive lately in trying to trade Philip Gustafsson. I think he's talked to teams like New Jersey and LA and teams like that, and is just trying to find out, what the marketplace could be for Gustafsson, because they are motivated to have Fleury and Wallstedt here next year, even though, as you and I talked on last week's show, it's not a necessity. Maybe it might make more sense to be more patient, see if Gus can reinvent himself, and at times have 3 goalies next year and things like that, especially if you're not completely confident that Fleury and Wallstedt are capable of handling each half the season. But I am getting an impression, and it makes a lot of sense. It's trade season, right? The draft is usually when a trade like that would happen. It probably wouldn't happen. If any trade, though, could happen after July 1, it would be this trade, because the way it's going to work is that you might want to try to make the trade at the draft, but some of those teams that would say, you know what, I'd rather try to go after that free agent, you might want to wait till after July 1, and then Gus could be a plan B. I still think Jersey's a good example, where there's no doubt that Tom Fitzgerald is motivated to try to go get a Jacob Markstrom or a Linus Ullmark. But if he strikes out on them, a good plan B could be Gus at the price level.
That's true. The other thing, though, is if you're in the Wild shoes, it would be nice to know if you had that extra cash when you go into the free agent market.
Exactly.
So there's a reason to at least pursue it, consider it, research it prior, because when you're in the Wild spot and you really have a shot at one guy, in all likelihood, one significant guy that's going to fit into your NHL roster right now, I'd want to know if I had what my ceiling is for what I can pay that guy. And by pursuing the trade before that, it could benefit you. But as my feeling with this from the beginning has been, you're not in a spot where you have to trade Gus. So it isn't like the Kevin Fiala situation where it was, we have to find out what the best package we can get because this deal has to happen. With Gus, it's if the right deal is out there, we'll make the deal. So I'd want to look at it prior to free agency just so that I knew if I had a little bit extra cash that I could spend on a free agent. Maybe it changes the guy you could get from a guy that you max are looking at a year or two to now I might be able to look at a guy that could be here that I could extend further than that because I have a little more cash at my disposal. And then if that deal isn't the right deal prior to July 1, then I do exactly what you're saying. And there are a lot of teams out there that I believe are going to be looking at a goaltending upgrade. And while there are a lot of names, I don't know how many are what I'd say surer bets than Philip Gustafsson. I mean, yes, Allmark, Markstrom, those guys are going to go. But there are going to be some teams left without one of those guys that might view Philip Gustafsson as a worth a shot kind of guy, better than what they have.
$88 million payroll the league announced next year, which that extra $300,000 could prove a little helpful for the Wild, especially if Marco Rossi makes the all-rookie team and they have an extra $212,500 overage. If he doesn't, now the Wild get an extra $300,000. So that'll be good. Last thing, and then we'll take a break and then go into the final segment. I want to talk to you about the PWHL segment, and then we got some good Twitter questions that we go through as well. The PWHL situation. The extensions, I think those are coming. I think that soon after July 1, we're going to find out that Jake Middleton has agreed to an extension in the 4-year range. And if you look at his marketplace, it's going to be about 4. I would think a little over 4. That's like if you look at evolving hockey, if he was going to sign somewhere else, it'd be in the 4.5 to 5 range next year, actually 5-ish. If he was going to re-sign here around 4, so my guess is that, especially if he gets no trade protection, that they give him a couple extra bucks and it'll be in that 4.2, 4.3 range. But I do think that the Wild are going to extend him, and then I think they continue to talk to the Bartletts about Brock Faber, and I think that's another one. I think his AAV is going to have a 9 in it, Anthony.
We'll see. It's right now, I think it's obviously we have the same opinion about Brock Faber and what his future with this organization is. And it'll be a contract that at the front end will seem huge, but by the time we're in the middle of it, I think we'll be looking at it as a good value for the player that Faber, everything right now looks like Faber's headed in the direction of being an elite defenseman for a long time.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break.
There are a lot of options to buy glasses out there. If you've been disappointed by high prices or poor online quality, check out our friends at Huxley Optical. I like Huxley for 2 reasons. First is the price. Simply put, I don't want to spend $800 on glasses. At Huxley, I know I'll get the same quality for half the price. They're a small independent business that is here to help you find glasses you love and save you money. Second is the service. They have options catered to what I need, and I know someone will be happy to help me find glasses. Whether it's a lens replacement, office glasses, or a brand new pair, they're always ready to help. Check out HuxleyEyewear.com. Again, that's HuxleyEyewear.com today, or go to their locations in Wayzata or Roseville. Tell them Russo sent you for 10% off your prescription purchase.
Hey everyone, Attorney Jerry Bosch here with Bosch Law Firm and WorkCompExperts.com. For almost 30 years, we've represented Minnesotans just like you all over the great state of Minnesota to guarantee they've been treated fairly and with respect when they've suffered a work-related injury. A work injury can change your life in an instant. You need someone on your side who can help you focus on getting back on your feet and getting paid while you do. You may be entitled to medical benefits, wage loss benefits, job placement, retraining, and payment for permanent disability. To make sure you are being paid all the work comp benefits you're entitled to, please call the attorneys at Bosch Law Firm. The call is always free, and there's never a fee unless we recover benefits on your behalf. Call 651-333-8300, Bosch Law Firm, or visit us at workcompexperts.com.
Anthony, tell us about Feller's Ranch.
Well, I'm excited. As we've talked over the last couple of weeks, Feller's Ranch has joined our show as one of our newest sponsors. I'm thrilled about that because of the quality of their steaks is second to none. They're the best steaks I've had. We had Vinny on. He talked about the spinalis cuts that we had tried. We've had their Denver cuts, which are unbelievable. Their ribeyes are terrific. We just had those at Ariana's graduation weekend. But right now, they just have announced that you'll be able to get their brisket at a place down in the southwestern suburbs, Northern Fire Barbecue. It's a cool spot. They've got an unbelievable selection of spices, and I know that the Fellers guys are really excited to have their Wagyu brisket available there. So if you're interested in brisket, you can check it out there. But as always, if you want their steaks delivered directly to your house, just go to fellersranch.com. Their vans are in the cities every week. They'll get it right to your front door. It couldn't be much easier, and you will not be disappointed in their cuts of steak.
Back here, worst seats in the house, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta.
Just want to mention that, we just heard from Feller's Ranch, and they're going to be at one of our upcoming live shows. Either that or they're going to provide this, but we're going to have some Feller's Ranch giveaways at one of these upcoming shows. Might be the June show, might be in July at some point, but we will have some gift certificates for a couple of our lucky fans in attendance to pick up an opportunity to sample Feller's steaks. And
nice.
Boy, if you're a steak person, you got to come and check this out. It'd be worth it just to see if you can win the raffle. However we do it, we'll have to figure out how we're going to give them away. But bottom line is, it'd be worth it for you.
And again, our next live show at 7 p.m. June 24th at Tuttle's in Hopkins. Haven't been there in a while, so looking forward to that. How was your Mason Margaux cocktail last night? Was it good?
It was good. They have a cocktail that we like, that we've stopped there on their little sidewalk. And we actually watched your dinner companion, Dane Mizutani, walk down the street and yelled out his name and watched him be baffled as he couldn't figure out where the voice came from. But they have a build-your-own cocktail where I forget what they call it, as you wish or something like that. You give them the spirit that you want and the style that you like. Like, do you like it boozy or refreshing? Do you like it fruity or citrusy or dry, and you just give them the adjectives and then they whip something up for you. So it's different every time. And it's a part of their happy hour, which I love. So we've tried that a few times, and you say, I'd like tequila, I like it boozy and citrusy. And then they just whip something up for you. So I like that.
Any truth it's named after your wife?
No, it's not. It should be, though, because we do like the place. They have a good wine list. We haven't eaten dinner there yet.
The funny thing is it's spelled the way that my mom spells your wife's name.
Yeah, which that way is more rare. We get a lot of people that just assume there's a T on the end of it, which there's not.
Actually, that's actually how my mom spells Margaux's name.
Yeah, this is the Margaux, the G-E-A-U-X. But it was good. We were down in the same neighborhood as you. I know you went to Porzana. We went there the night before, and it was interesting. I got stopped by a couple guests while we were waiting, saying they had heard on our show that we were going to Porzana, and this is your first time here. I heard on last week's show, and we loved it. The food was great. Wine was good.
So last night I walk into Porzana and I check in, and there's a guy standing there, and he goes, "I hear it's your birthday." And I'm thinking to myself, I don't think I would have put that on the reservation. He goes, "No, I have a friend of mine that listens to your podcast religiously, and he sent it to me. His name is Bill Somerville. He's the wine manager at Porzana." And he goes, "And I actually know LaPanta. In fact, LaPanta's been to my house for dinner." I'm like, that does not shock me. That is on brand.
Yeah, we did. We went to his house for dinner one night with a group. We had a terrific time, and he cooked about a 6 or 7 course dinner for us. It was outstanding. Sampled a whole bunch of wine that night. And he's been in the restaurant business around town for a while and been involved in a lot of different restaurants. So I didn't know that he was the wine guy there. They're relatively new, just opened in the fall. But it's a terrific place. I like it. I'd recommend it. It's a little expensive, but the food was terrific.
Yeah, last night was unreal. I mean, again, just a great meal. Went there for birthday dinner. Let's talk about the PWHL situation. Just shocking, this feel good story where they win the first championship in the league's history after putting a franchise here in the state of hockey. As you know, Anthony, I'm not sure if you're aware because I know you're new to our state, but we don't win a lot of championships, but we seem to in the women's pro sports level. And then right up to brand, just like the Lynx, the PWHL Minnesota team does that. And a week later, a Minnesota icon, Natalie Darwitz, is out of her job. There is no doubt in our reporting that there was some sort of rift and power struggle going on between the head coach, Ken Klee, and Natalie Darwitz, and definitely a faction inside the locker room of people that were sort of on Team Ken and Team Natalie. And one of the players that is on Team Ken is Kendall Coyne Schofield, who essentially helped create this league, helped write the CBA and all that stuff. She's had a lot of success with Ken at the USA hockey level. Obviously, he's the captain of the team. Only know one side of the story, don't really understand or know what the rift was about. But man, talk about ignoring it at the draft this week. Like the reporters were basically instructed that they're not going to comment on this. Nobody asked about it. And so we are just left with a lot of answers, but certainly something smells here.
And I don't know anything about it. The timing was bizarre. Right after a championship, right before the draft. And I like Natalie a lot. I know that she's intense, and I have no idea what was going on behind the scenes. I do know the guy that produced the draft show, so I'll have to find out if he was instructing his on-air people to steer clear and stay away.
Yeah. By the way, again, a ton of messages about, I guess, aesthetics. Has reported that the Minnesota Wild are going to rebrand in 25-26 to North Star's colors and all that stuff. I am told from inside the Wild that there is absolutely no truth to this. So I'll ask some more questions about it, but they have always indicated to me that there was no truth to something like this coming. So I was a little caught off guard when I saw this today, and now I'm getting text messages and tweets and all sorts of things. But it is totally not based on fact, is what I am getting.
People are telling you
what my people are telling me that are incredibly high up in this organization. So I don't think it's true. You want to go through some Twitter questions, or sure. I know that we haven't talked a lot about the Wild, so we might as well just answer some that people are concerned about. Let me find some for you, Anthony. Any rumblings? We talked about the Middleton extension. Howard, it's funny that this person, Rob Winnick, just goes, how is Jared Spurgeon progressing? I actually just sent him a text because I'm going to be in Edmonton the next 4 days to just see if he is back home and if I can get together with him. So hopefully I'll have a little more. I did talk to Bill Guerin a week or two ago, and he told me that he is progressing, that obviously at now he would not be cleared to play, but by training camp they are fully anticipating that he would be cleared to play. And as you mentioned, that's absolutely essential for the Wild to have a bounce back year.
Right. They have to have it. And he has to be Jared Spurgeon. He has to be the player that he's been, doesn't have to be a 27-minute guy, but he has to be the guy that is the stabilizing influence on the blue line that he's always been, and has to be able to play the game the same way. And when he was going into the process late in the year, and I chatted with him a couple times, with all of these surgeries nowadays, I'm always amazed at the way doctors can peg the rehab process. And I experienced it a little bit myself when I had my knee surgery, where at 1 month you'll feel this, at 2 months you'll feel this, at 3 months you'll feel this. Don't be fooled by that and think you can do more. If you stay on this schedule, in 6 months you will be 100%. And Jared told me kind of the same thing. He said they laid out the dates for me, and if we do this right now, I will be ready at training camp. So assuming that there's no setback, and assuming, as I think it's fair to assume, that Jared will do everything on schedule as he's supposed to, that he can control, you're going to end up with a guy that's ready to go when training camp rolls around.
Trevor Nelson asked, is there any chance the Wild would sign Tarasenko to a 1-year deal? Do you also think that would be a good signing? I think it's going to be a player like that. I think it's going to be a David Perron, a Vladimir Tarasenko. It's going to have to be somebody that is willing to take a 1 or 2 year deal. And the one thing I will say about watching Tarasenko for the last couple rounds, Anthony, and I don't know how much you've watched him, is that he can still play up and down your lineup. He is not nearly as dynamic as he was when he was scoring for fun against the Wild in the playoffs, the twice that the Wild played them. I mean, if you remember the one round, the one where
Mike power play goals.
Oh my God, yeah. He's not like that. Like, he does not shoot the puck the way he did before his 5 shoulder surgeries, but he is an impressive guy to talk to. He seems like a great guy. He could play in it, like he's playing on their third line with Lundell and Lustarena, and that line's been great. So you could play him up and down.
That surprised me a little. I didn't like the addition when Florida added him. I thought he didn't fit with the way they were playing. And at the time of the deal, if you would have said he's going to settle into a third line role and be effective there, I wouldn't have believed it. He's been a lot better than I thought he would have been, but that goes back to what we talked about earlier in the show about the way that team plays, the leadership of guys like Barkov and Tkachuk that set the tone for that. And you have to give a lot of credit to the head coach, because I just think if you look at the way Tarasenko has played throughout his career, I don't think there was ever a point where you would have said this guy could be a valuable third line player for you.
Yeah, I agree with you. Anthony Duclair, do you like him? He's another name I think that would make that would be in that
maybe
realm.
There have been flashes of him throughout his career, speed, and I've always thought he was going to turn into more than he's ever turned into. He to me would seem like more of a shot, a team that it was in a little bit different spot than the Wild would take, where maybe you'd be low risk, potentially high reward kind of signing. That I think if I'm the Wild, and maybe watch if we say this, then he ends up being the guy that they sign. But to me, the Wild, I would want more of a sure bet kind of guy. You only have one spot, so maybe it's a little bit lower ceiling. Something makes it sound like you're settling, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying more of a guy that you know what you're going to get guy, and even if it ends up being a hair less. But don't you think, go back to the Gustafsson potential trade and just what that difference could make. I mean, we don't know what the return would be, if it would be an NHL rostered player or if it would be prospects and picks or whatever. Let's just say that it frees up cap space because you get nothing that goes onto your NHL roster in return. Well, that really changes the type of player that you might be targeting for that one spot. If you add that amount of money to your wallet before you go out and sign a guy.
Yeah, that would be the thing. Like,
that's a big difference.
Yes, it'll be right. I mean, plans change. Like, if it has got
and that's what I've been saying all along with this is we just don't know what's going to happen. And if all of a sudden you've got an extra $3 million to throw around, well, now your target window of players has changed dramatically, and now you might start looking at guys that, okay, if I can get a guy that is more in this level, maybe it's a guy who's a part of the future, not just a bridge player. I think there's just a lot of things that could change if that deal is made prior to the free agent window.
This has been a fun pod. Thanks for the birthday gifts. The reason why I always like my birthday is that I always
Russo's birthday, in case you missed it earlier in the show.
44 minutes, Brandon, you got to get that out. The reason why I always like my birthday is I always, usually the gifts that I get from you are stuff that I realize that for the last year, Margot has found a flaw in me. So she all of a sudden is like, I think this is something we need to improve on.
Right. This one checks out. And I loved as you opened it, as she explained to you exactly why you needed it, how it would help you, and what you should do with it.
Yeah, exactly. It was perfect. So,
and you know what? I should, speaking of that, I should wish Margot, it's our 32nd wedding anniversary.
I know. That's awesome.
The day after your birthday. So the day after you turn, we celebrate 32 years of marriage.
The same day as Val Buray's birthday, I might mention. All right. So Anthony, Brandon's got a lot of bleeping out to do. And for the first time ever, it's not because of me cursing.
On Twitter, happy to Michael Russo.
All right, thanks. June 24th is our next live show. Again, at Tuttle's at 7 p.m. Really, really excited to finally get out in the community again. here in Minnesota. Actually, that's what I'm just excited about, is to be back in Minnesota for more than a day. I get to go to Edmonton later today. Thanks for joining us at the Aquarius Home Services studio on location. Thanks to Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment, Royal Credit Union, Huxley Optical, Bosch Law Firm, and Fellers Ranch. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.